Hey folks, thanks so much for being here. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up. What you're listening to is an episode from VJ Talks, my podcast. And this is a re-upload, so if you hear anything about, hey, go check out this link, go check out this forum, etc., it's more than likely not there anymore. So just wanted to give you that heads up before you went looking for something that wasn't there. Either way, thank you so much for watching. Please enjoy, and let me know what you think in the comments. Catch you later. Hello and welcome to VJ Talks, a bi-monthly podcast presented by VJH Creations LLC, where I talk about anything and everything to do with TTRPGs and sometimes wider pop culture. I want to give a quick shout out to Arcane Anthems for providing the intro and outro music you hear for this podcast. Arcane Anthems creates free music for tabletop role-playing streams and podcasts. Music adds immersion, tension, and emotion to games, but often streams and podcasts shy away from using music for fear of legal ramifications. Arcane Anthems wants to make it simple to add music to your games. Hello, we've got a new episode. This is part one of two parts, so this episode might be shorter than you're used to, but there will be a part two with some interviews included in it to get to the heart of the Dark Sun conversation. But enjoy this episode. Amid the barren wastelands of Athos lie the scattered city-states, each in the grip of its own tyrannical sorcerer king. Protecting their own positions with dark magic, they demand absolute obedience. The restless mobs are placated with bread and circuses. The arenas overflow with spectators seeking release from their harsh lives. The land outside the cities belong to no one. Savage elves race across the deserts while insectoid thrycranes satisfy their taste for blood. Dwarves labor at projects beyond the scope of men, and feral halflings lie in ambush. Athos is a land of deadly magic and powerful psionics that offers promises of glory or even of survival. Those who do not have the cunning to face life on Athos will surely perish, leaving nothing but bones bleached white under the blistering rays of the Dark Sun. Before we dive into the recent discussion around Dark Sun, let's get a little history for those who are unaware. Dark Sun is an original Dungeons & Dragons campaign setting set in the fictional post-apocalyptic desert world of Athos. Jesus. I really do expect there should be like an L in there somewhere. We'll get past it. Dark Sun featured an innovative metaplot, influential artwork, dark themes, and a genre-bending take on traditional fantasy role-playing. The product line began with the original Dark Sun box set released for D&D 2nd edition in 1991, originally ran until 1996, and was one of TSR's most successful releases. Dark Sun deviated from the feudalistic backdrops of its Tolkien-esque pseudo-medieval contemporaries such as Greyhawk or Forgotten Realms in favor of a composite of dark fantasy, planetary romance, and the dying Earth subgenre. Dark Sun's designers presented a savage, magic-ravaged desert world where resources are scarce and survival is a daily struggle. The traditional fantasy races and character classes were altered or omitted to better suit the setting's darker themes. Dark Sun differs further in that the game has no deities, arcane magic is reviled for causing the planet's current ecological fragility, and psionics are extremely common. Dark Sun's popularity endured long after the setting was no longer supported, with a lively online community developing around it. Only third-party materials was produced for the 3rd edition D&D rules, but a new official edition of Dark Sun was released in 2010 for the 4th edition. Alright, Dark Sun through the editions. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, 2nd edition. TSR released the 2nd edition of Battle System, its mass combat rule set, in 1989, and in 1990, the company began pre-production on a new campaign setting that would use this rule set, the working title of which was War World. The team envisioned a post-apocalyptic world full of exotic monsters and no hallmark fantasy creatures whatsoever. TSR worried about this concept, wondering how to market a product that lacked any familiar elements. Eventually, elves, dwarves, and dragons returned, but in warped variations of their standard AD&D counterparts. The designers credited this reversion as a pivotal change that launched the project in a new direction. The original Dark Sun box set, released in 1991, presented the base setting details wherein the Tyr region is on the verge of revolution against the Sorcerer Kings. A 5-book fictional series, the Prism Pentad, we'll go into what that is in a little bit, written by Denning and edited by Lauder, was released beginning in 1991 in coordination with box sets. A decade after the first box set, the expanded and revised box set, released in 1995, updated the setting to reconcile the events and characters introduced since the initial 1991 release and gave more details on the world outside the Tyr region. The Dark Sun game line ended abruptly in 1996. Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition. Dark Sun was not officially supported by the 3rd edition of D&D, but Paizo Publishing and the fans at Athos.org kept the setting alive through the use of the open gaming license issued by Wizards of the Coast. David Noonan created an updated version of the setting for Paizo in 2004 that was published in Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine that presented rules for 3rd edition. This version took place 300 years after the last published setting details and sought to return the setting's metaplot to something closer to the original box set. This version also provided rules and setting details for the new 3rd edition player character races such as Ellens and Maenads. Athos.org presented another update for the setting for 3.5 in 2008. It was a rules-only conversion that provided everything needed to play in the Dark Sun world through the non-epic levels. The Athos.org version also condensed the metaplot information and presented a much broader view, allowing players an opportunity to create campaigns in virtually any era of Athos, even as far back as the Blue Age. Athos.org was also given permission to convert and release 2 unpublished 2nd edition source books, Dragoth Ascending and Terrors of the Dead Lands, which was based on TSR's unpublished Secrets of the Dead Lands. Dungeons & Dragons, 4th edition. In August 2009, Wizards of the Coast announced at Gen Con Indy that Dark Sun would be the next campaign setting to be released for 4th edition. The setting was chosen because designer James Wyatt felt that the setting's grittier, action-oriented feel was a good fit for the 4th edition rules, and because the setting demonstrated that Dungeons & Dragons games could go beyond the tropes and themes of standard medieval fantasy. This version was heralded as a return of the feel of the original 1991 box set, taking the setting back before the events of the Prism Pentad. The meta plot's timeline is set back to just after the original Dark Sun's first adventure, Freedom. The Sorcerer King Kalik is dead, and Tyr is a free city-state, but the future of Athos beyond that is up to the players. Game designer Richard Baker said the design team wanted the game to begin when Athos had the most possibilities for adventure, and offer a version of the setting where the Prism Pentad storyline would be possible but not mandatory. Quick side note for anyone that's like me and has no idea what the Prism Pentad is. It is a series of 5 books written by Troy Denning and set in the world of Athos. The desertic wastelands of Athos are ruled by the despotic Sorcerer Kings, and Boris, the legendary dragon, roams in the desert and forces the Sorcerer Kings to pay him a tribute of 1,000 slaves each year. In this grim land, a small and improbable band of heroes, Aegis of Asticles, if I'm mispronouncing these, no I'm not, leave me alone, Rickus the half-dwarf, Neva the gladiator, Sadira the half-elf, and Tithian of Mericles, fights for the freedom of their hometown Tyr. Eventually their path will lead them to a great battle with the fate of Athos itself at stake. So like I said, there are 5 books, and those books are The Verdant Passage, where our heroes gather and start a quest in order to defeat the despotic sorcerer King Kalik of Tyr. The Crimson Legion narrates Rickus's battle against the invading armies of King Hamanu. However, he'll have to endure many trials in order to succeed. The Amber Enchantress, Sadira starts a dangerous journey in order to reach the legendary Tower of Primords in order to find a power strong enough to stop Boris. The Obsidian Oracle, where Aegis chased after Tithian in order to arrest him and recover the Obsidian Lens, the artifact required for slaying the dragon. And finally, the Cerulean Storm, where the final battle against our heroes and the dragon Boris takes place. Alright, back on topic. The most notable 4th edition change expanded character building by introducing themes. Themes were a third way to define a player character's identity through archetypes or careers, allowing them to more clearly describe their place or role within the world. Some variant classes central to the previous edition, such as gladiators, templars, and elemental priests, were introduced as themes. Themes proved very popular and were widely adopted in other settings. The scale of Athos was reduced slightly, but the geography was largely unchanged. The edition change created other notable differences, including Templars as warlocks, the Drey becoming dragonborn, the introduction of new core races such as Tieflings and Eladrin, and the exclusion of races from previous editions, Alans, Maenads, and Terrans, and Aarakocra. The new 4th edition races were given Ephesian twists in a similar manner to the original fantasy races. Possibly the most significant change to the setting was the alteration to its cosmology. In previous editions, Athos had a setting-specific cosmology that was isolated from the rest of the D&D universe, making it nearly impossible to access via other planes or space lanes. 4th edition instead presented Athos squarely within the standard D&D cosmology, though it was still difficult to access or exit. On February 22nd, D&D Exec opened ups about OGL and 1D&D, My Interview with Kyle Brink by Bob Worldbuilder was uploaded to YouTube. When questioned about whether or not Wizards of the Coast would be revising or republishing Dark Sun, Kyle responded with, "I'll be frank here. The Dark Sun setting is problematic in a lot of ways, and that's the main reason we haven't come back to it. We know it's got a huge fan following. Unsurprisingly, this sparked a discussion among the D&D community. There were 2 tweet threads in particular I want to talk about, from Mr. Rex. Players can most certainly handle themes of slavery and racism in their games. Adventures like Out of the Abyss deals with this and more, and it works perfectly fine. DMs know they can tune the themes to the table's liking. Dungeon masters and players are not children that need to be protected from the harms of the world. They are adults that can decide for themselves what they want to play or not. Curse of Strahd is filled with problematic themes and is still the most popular adventure. That being said, the reality is that Wizards of the Coast does have to worry about whether a book is going to sell or not, and if they feel like people are not going to buy Dark Sun because they don't like the themes, then it makes sense not to make it. It's frankly a big risk. I am of the opinion that I would rather them just leave campaign settings alone rather than have them remade into something that they are not. If they only want to release PG-13 books from now on, that is a perfectly good business strategy for a mainstream company, but it comes at a huge risk of them only being able to release vanilla content in fear of alienating some part of the audience. I don't begrudge them for doing it though. It's still probably the smart thing to do. Remember, all that matters is a good story. All else is secondary. And now a second tweet from the newbie DM, Wizards of the Coast Cowbrink. I'll be frank here, the Dark Sun setting is problematic in a lot of ways, and that's the main reason we haven't come back to it. It wasn't problematic a decade ago when it came out for 4E. It was well handled, and with some creativity it could be done right. They shouldn't be scared of challenging settings and themes. Put your creative hats on and do the work. That's what you are paid to do. It smells like they're worrying about what Twitter's reaction will be before even putting words to paper. Meh. Including difficult themes and works doesn't automatically make it problematic. Sorry, not buying that. Figure it out. You're creative folks. Now, I did respond to Mr. Rex's comments, to Mr. Rex's tweets, right? It's true, DMs and players don't need to be protected from the harms of the world of Dark Sun, but what about the world being protected from the harms DMs and players will engage in? I'd argue it's a simple fact that most DMs and players haven't done the work necessary to engage with these kinds of topics in a way that doesn't reinforce whatever bigotries they might have, overt or covert. And while a lot of us might want to say it's just fiction, it isn't that deep, real-world bigotries can be reinforced through gameplay, and then be brought into the real world where it can do actual harm. I'm reminded of the white supremacists who said the way orcs are handled in D&D reinforce their racist thoughts on the intelligence of black people and needing to protect their own white people from outsiders. And I don't think Curse of Strahd is a good example for this specifically because A, while there are anti-Romani depictions via the Vistani, it's not like baked into the setting the way slavery and stuff is baked into Dark Sun. And B, there's been pushback on allowing that stuff to stay in there and for a change to be made to make it better. You can't really make the Dark Sun stuff better in a way you can the Vistani, not while keeping it as Dark Sun. And I know there are so many talented POC designers out there, but it takes a special kind of education to pull this off correctly, and most of us, myself included, probably don't have that and will just end up doing more harm than good if we're going to keep the slavery racism elements. Also, I know this is not why Wizards of the Coast probably isn't going to do it. For those of you who don't know what I was talking about when I said I'm reminded of the white supremacists who said the way orcs are handled in D&D reinforce their racist thoughts on the intelligence of black people and needing to protect their own white people from outsiders, let me enlighten you. Learn all you need to know about race from Dungeons & Dragons. From reading and posting on the Imposing Views section of the forum, I read a lot of foolish comments from statements like, I know a black person who is really smart, therefore everything you're saying about racial intelligence differences is wrong. Well, of course, the lack of understanding of statistics this statement shows is staggering. I try to recall in my life when I could have fallen for such a foolish statement and can't think of when I would have. I completely understood how there could be smart blacks and yet blacks be less intelligent than whites as a whole when I was a child. When was the first time I thought about an idea like that? When I got into Dungeons & Dragons at the age of 9 or 10. I knew that elves were more agile than humans. I knew that because they had a +1 bonus. Back when I started playing, now it's +2 to dexterity. I knew there were more dexterous, even though the average elf had a dexterity of 11.5s and humans could have a dexterity of 18. These days, orcs have an average intelligence of 8.5, 10.5 average for 3d6 minus 2, and since IQ roughly responds to D&D intelligence times 10, then that puts your typical orc at an average IQ of 85. Who does that remind you of? Of course, even as a child, long before I was racially aware, I would have known you were a fool if you said that orcs were as smart as humans just because you had an orc character with an intelligence of 16. So when I was 10, I apparently knew more about statistics than your typical anti does. And this point may seem a bit silly, but it introduces an important idea that most white people are conditioned not to believe in: racial essentialism, the idea that race determines certain characteristics or tendencies. We knew that elves were more dexterous that dwarves were tough and that orcs were mean and nasty. We also knew that there were exceptions and that exceptions didn't mean general trends didn't still apply. D&D has a lot about racial loyalty. Elves band together in protection of their forests, orcs raid human villages and have to be stopped by the hero. In D&D, you have loyalty to your people, and you know that sometimes race in general can be a threat to yours. As I've grown older over the years, I've continued to enjoy role-playing games, and though the games I've played have advanced beyond just fighting orcs and finding magic items, but I think that some of those ideas I was exposed to as a child were good lessons that maybe helped me come to terms with the ideas that are part of being a white nationalist. Mr. Rex contends that all that matters is a good story and everything else is secondary. He would be right if D&D and TTRPGs in general were played in a vacuum where nothing from the game could affect how people interact with others in not only the TTRPG space, but the world at large. Because that isn't true, the story isn't all that matters, or at least it shouldn't be. I didn't respond to the newbie DM's tweet because I'm a 5e baby. I got into TTRPGs with 5e, and while previous edition settings fascinate me, I don't have time to read the hundreds and hundreds of 5e related products that I have, let alone an old setting I never had any exposure to. But now that I've done some research, I would like to push back on the idea of it not being problematic when it came out a decade ago, or that it was well handled. That's blatantly false in my opinion for a number of reasons. 4th edition Dark Sun includes racial genocide, chattel slavery, a quote-unquote Ottoman slave race that is arguably bred by slavers and whose name is reminiscent of a racial slur used for mixed black people. For long-time listeners, you should know what my feelings are about adding those kinds of things into your setting, but for anyone that's new, I'll say it plainly. I hate having that stuff in the world, and I don't think out of very specific circumstances people should have that in their games. That being racial genocide, chattel slavery, slave races, But on top of those things existing, the entire design team, including the lead designers, were a bunch of white people, not a single black person inside as far as I can tell. And yes, I am specifying black and not POC on purpose, given the nature of what's inside the book. This is of course not me saying other groups haven't experienced racial genocide, but a lot of the elements have clear parallels to American chattel slavery, which is unsurprising. Before diving in for research, I already thought it was likely that would be the case. If there are going to be settings that use this kind of theme as its central conceit, these stories need to be led by black voices. The accurate statement would have been most people didn't realize it was problematic back then, and those that did might not have been listened to or even had the platform to speak up and make a lot of people hear them about it. Some other arguments that are kind of floating around for why updating this setting should be fine include heroes can topple fascism, this can be a game about hope and rebellion, and that there's still slavery in current settings such as the Forgotten Realms. It is true that there is still slavery in the Forgotten Realms. There's even a 5e adventure that can start with the players being slave. I think it's disingenuous for that to be an argument given the fact that slavery isn't a core conceit of the Forgotten Realms as a whole, unlike Dark Sun, and save for Out of the Abyss slavery, I could play D&D 5e with published adventures and not have to encounter slavery in the game. Don't get me wrong, I don't think slavery should be in the Forgotten Realms, but it's an order of magnitude different from Dark Sun. On the topic of heroes can topple fascism or it can be a game about hope and rebellion, yes, heroes could topple it. This could be a story about people rising from the shackles of oppression and taking back their lives. However, my original statement about people not doing the work to engage with these settings correctly still stands, especially if the DM is expected to roleplay an oppressive regime that has a lot of racial undertones. On top of that, not everyone is going to want to play that. Some people are going to want to either A, fully engage with the evil and be a part of the oppressive system, or B, while not wanting to be a part of the system, they aren't going to really want to challenge the systemic issues. It feels like a lot of people saying that 5e can bring back Dark Sun are either seeing the setting with rose-tinted glasses or are ignoring the very clear potential harm in either its implementation by Wizards of the Coast or really anybody, really, not just Wizards of the Coast. I say this for third-party creators as well, unless the right team is put together or in its play at the tables. And I just want to reiterate, I'm sure there is someone out there, there is someone who could lead a team to implementing this correctly. There's totally somebody that could do it. I don't think that, while that's true, I don't think that's going to cover what could happen at the tables with these kinds of settings, even if it's implemented perfectly. And so I want to acknowledge that there is talent out there that can do it, but all of the people that have been proposed to do it, I don't think are the right people, for a couple of reasons. And again, myself included, this is not me saying, oh no, don't give it to that person, give it to me. I am not the one to do it either, despite being black. Okay. And while this isn't the last word on Dark Sun for me, because there will be a part 2, I will say not only do I hope no current or future editions try to bring back Dark Sun whole cloth, I also hope it never gets opened up on the DM's Guild or under Creative Commons. Let this past die.